just because people wouldn't do the right thing. So then you have to introduce laws. You add laws, it gets top heavy. And that's what the definition of legalism is. It is so many laws that you can't move.
Priesthood, everything about their life and their responsibility and their service was a redemptive act for their community. We are all called to live our lives in a redemptive way.
How you handle it.
It's all about
how you handle the trial.
How you deal with it. So,
it should produce something godly in you. And if it doesn't, that should be useful information as well.
Right.
If this button gets pushed, I start acting out and I start cussing, well, I know according to the standard, well, that's not the proper behavior I'm supposed to have in it. So now I get something to work on.
Right.
But it's the ones that justify it, self-righteousness, because you can read about Pentecost and say self-righteous or righteous indignation. And I know you were talking earlier, there's some bylaws to that, though.
Right. Because at the end of the day, there are multiple religious traditions. As a matter of fact, some Orthodox Jews in Jerusalem utilize that text to justify harassing Messianic Jews.
Yeah.
Right. So we know that this text can be construed all kinds of ways. If you look at it from
ultra-Orthodox.
Ultra-Orthodox. But if you look at it from the perspective of just one man pursuing what he feels like
to harass people.
Exactly. To justify one man going on the force of his own righteousness, and you don't pay attention to the fact that no, he was not acting in his own self-righteousness. He had received instruction. God gave the instruction to Moshe, tell the judges to do this. Moshe gave the instruction to the judges. Here's one of the judges carrying out the instructions. Yeah. He's doing what he's told to do. Now, he might have been emotionally connected with the instruction. I ain't saying that he didn't feel some kind of way, because I already told you I would have felt some kind of way.
Our rules say he couldn't be.
Really?
Yeah. So now, having said that, the words that make up that incident are words like zeal.
Yes. How do you not be passionate
in this, that you don't take joy in killing someone?
Right.
A police officer that's happy after that's a problem.
Right. Exactly.
You take joy in the law of the Lord. You delight yourself in the law of the Lord. You are zealous for the law of the Lord, but you cannot delight in the destruction of another person. And we're actually warned about that in the New Testament. And what does it say? Can you paraphrase that? There's a scripture that says, do not delight when someone else falls. It's something to that, lest something worse happens to you.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember something about after the verse temptations, but it's basically, if you find your brother in a fault, you are to pick them up in humility, lest it happened to you, basically. And at the end of the day, it reflects and is supposed to remind us to be humble in how we deal with each other.
You can still be zealous for the Lord.
Yeah, be zealous for the Lord. Contend for the faith.
Proverbs 24:17. Do not gloat when your enemy falls. When he stumbles, do not let your heart rejoice.
Right. That's yet another one, because the other one I was referring to is in the New Testament.
Yes.
So, but they both carry the same implication in the same way.
So he couldn't delight in a matter of fact, I would imagine when the dust settles for an Israelite of that time, there should be some mourning that you took down your achi, you took down your brother.
Right.
But at the same time, joy in that a great crisis was averted in that process.
Because a whole bunch of my brothers and sisters didn't die because I took this one action and God was pleased. So
the iniquity of this is, you messed up, I want you to get yours. Right. That's sin. You messed up, something's got to be done, but I take no delight. I take delight in the justice of the Lord. I take delight that the Lord sees everything. I take delight that he placed the Spirit, because even when you get into the Hebrew, we have this idea that people weren't Spirit-filled into the New Testament. No. The New Testament was the fulfillment of the prophecy that he would pour out his Spirit on all flesh. These people, as it's listed, because even when we have Aaron's has passed away, Moshe's about to go, and the Lord talks about You put some of your authority on him. My spirit is on him.
Right.
So even in this, when we read in the Hebrew about, and actually I have the words, hamati, which means heat. And then kne is jealousy and zeal. And actually in modern Hebrew, it's the word for fanaticism or being a fanatic. So he's got a spirit inside of him that's driving that. From a scriptural standpoint, it wasn't his spirit that he was operating in.
Yeah.
Even though he did it and the Lord was pleased that he did it, but it was another spirit, a spirit of the Lord that he was operating on that. And so that would, to me, that looks like the attribute of God. Because with this ruach that we're filled for, the attributes come with it. He's operating in something that the Father recognized that was his own. And then to what you were saying earlier, so I'm not going to kill you, because that's another thing with Pinchas. The risk of this is that he dies. I don't know if he knew the law inside and out, but the risk of his actions was he could have been judged, sentenced, and murder. Killed for murder according to the law. Yeah. The other thing is, he could have maybe not delivered such a good aim and got murdered by the person who he was trying to kill.
Right.
So there was a lot of risk in him going and doing this. It wasn't a free kill. It wasn't, oh, looky, I get to kill someone and get away with it. Him getting away with it, if you can say it that way, was not locked in stone when he did it. It was after the fact.
Right.
And the Lord recognized himself in it. So now you did not qualify for the priesthood. I gave it to Aaron and his sons. And yes, you're a son of Aaron, but you were born before this came to place, because it was going to be the descendants.
Right.
You were already there. You don't get that. So not only am I giving you the priesthood, but I'm giving you an everlasting priesthood. So now we've got another idea, an everlasting priesthood connected to zeal.
Right.
And passion for God.
And which is, there's so much, it's funny because every time you say priest, it means something different for me now. After having studied Torah with you. Right?
What does it mean to you now? Well, what did it mean to you before?
Well, before it was the office of the priest as understood and through the lens of my Christian faith and experience. Mm-hmm. You know,
the office.
Seeing pastors and seeing their overseers and how they walked in the Christian tradition of that, and then learning.
So meaning when you Christian, just that it was an authoritative.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. But then studying Torah and learning, okay, well, this is actually this is where they performed that responsibility in the tabernacle. This is what those responsibilities consisted of. And this is why God specifically selected these people and what he said about it. They were a sacrifice to him, a representation of the firstborn of all Israel. So off the top, their actual existence in that role was a redemption for the nation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That part right there. Right.
Yeah.
So,
just the idea
of that. So everything about their life and their responsibility and their service was a redemptive act for their community.
Yeah.
Off the top. So just starting there and then looking at, okay, now here are the requirements of priesthood. This is the level of accountability God holds you to. This is how serious he takes it, because when you get it wrong, it's normally death. So he's not playing about this. He's serious, and his requirements are not flexible. He's very firm. He's very determined. This is what this is. This is what I require for this sacrifice to me. Otherwise, I would have to require the firstborn of every one of y'all's families. But instead, I'm taking this tribe.
Was made. For every Israelite, there was a representative in the temple proper, inner temple, to each one of those. It's kind of interesting because it's almost like the guardian angel idea. with limited scope. Right. It's just concerning sacrifice.
Right.
But the fact that everyone was represented by somebody else that was taking care of it, that's kind of an interesting. And now we still have the same thing with Yeshua. So it's kind of an interesting thing because Jews, it's a funny thing. When you try to evangelize a Jew, well, y'all go to Jesus, we don't have any middleman. That's not true. That's not true at all.
Right.
The high priest was a middleman.
Exactly. And the difference is we say that Jesus is the high priest that can be touched by our infirmities.
Yes.
He's not so far removed from us up there that he doesn't know the pain and the conflict that we experience, because he specifically came here to experience it so that he can then show us how to perfect the process of walking his requirements out in front of us. And then say, now this is this new standard, which was higher than the pre-existing standard. Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute.
So where is your standpoint now on this idea, the priest? Because technically everyone is a priest of sorts. Right. So how does that play out with your understanding as to, like, how does that become tangible?
So now that becomes tangible. And of course, there's...
Because we're a nation of priests.
Right, exactly. Yeah. We have been made a nation of priests and kings, and all, everything that, Rasho explained so eloquently and just killed it. but at the end of the day, for me now, priesthood, if we are all priests, we are all called to live our lives in a redemptive way. Mm-hmm. That we are all supposed to be, well, like Paul wrote it in Romans 12. I beseech you, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable. We are called to be that to God for our communities.
Yes.
Wherever they are, because now it's not constrained to just Israel. Now it's everywhere, because we have all been brought into, by the spirit of adoption, into the inheritance of Abraham. So what does that mean? That means we all have this responsibility, that we are the sacrifice, just like the one. When it's written that Christ was the first fruit of many sons. Yeah, we're that. We're supposed, just like he was a sacrifice for us, we're supposed to be a sacrifice for all of them.
So that means the responsibility, absolutely, because the idea is this. The Lord didn't take my firstborn. Instead, a Levite is now my firstborn.
Exactly.
And so that makes atonement. They're doing what they need to do within the temple grounds. Some of them are priests. One of them's a high priest, but everybody has a role in this, whether it's carrying things. So then we are now a priesthood. And then what do we do with that? Because according to the strictest sense, we should be making atonement for those who are not and standing in the gap. And really, one of the tangible ways I think this plays out is understand, if not for us, the world is destroyed tomorrow. That's it. Without someone standing in the gap. So when we're busy judging people, which, by the way, I think that it is against the law to judge another person. And the reason being is because I hold the words of Yeshua as Torah, because he was Torah. Mm-hmm. So therefore, I don't with all the apostles, because they were men, and what you're seeing is the reaction of what's happening to them, and they're reporting that. Sometimes I do read parts of the New Testament as law. Other times I see it as their response to what God was doing. But when Yeshua is speaking, and this is law, even when he gave a parable. So when he gave the parable, and his disciples asked him, well, do we pull up the tares? He said, no, in so doing, you may pull up some of the wheat. Right. My Father will take care of that in the end, to paraphrase. So right away, that tells me I don't know the difference between good and evil enough to be able to separate it that way. Exactly. So if I start applying my standard of good and evil, I'm going to take wheat and tares alike, according to my standard. So then for me, like I said, I received that as a law, which means I can't judge not a one of y'all. Not a one of you. Right. He will do that, but my job is to stand in the middle.
Right.
To make atonement, to be the gap, which by the way, and we went through this up to, so Moshe did beautifully, with the one exception.
Right.
That got us to this moment in time. The Lord told him to speak to the rock, because when Miriam dies, the rock starts giving water. It stops giving water. And matter of fact, we looked at, and the rabbis will say that rock gave water in the marriage of Miriam because of this. So when she is no more, the water is no more. Moshe's got to go back and get the engine restarted based off of another merit. But the Lord gives him instruction, speak to the rock. And what does he do?
He strikes the rock twice after yelling at the children of Israel. rebellious lot. Dude, what are we going to have to do? Hit this rock to make water? and then, which is the exact, God says specifically when he talks to Moshe about, him going up to die, he reminds him, your brother's already dead. You're about to be dead too, because in Meribah, y'all didn't
the
honor
waters
me.
of affliction.
Yeah,
Meribah,
you didn't honor me before the people.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, yeah, I guess you're right, because if he had spoken to the rock, the people would have known. If God's words are so powerful that Moses can speak them to a rock and water will come out of them, how much more should we follow?
Yeah.
But instead, he out there causing a scene, hitting on rocks.
Because he's upset.
Yeah.
But that all started with all that Lashon Hara, and you just see it goes, even Moshe now is affected. It went to Aaron and Miriam. Now Moshe's got an attitude against the people. I've had enough. Now here's what I don't get, and because it doesn't say, but if they were dying because of thirst, certainly Moshe would have been aware of that and gone to the Father. Right. So I'm thinking they missed the water by like 5 minutes or something and just was looking for something to complain about. Right. I mean, I don't know that for sure because they took it to him immediately, and he lost his cool for a minute and then sets into motion the suffering servant.
Right.
It's codified before here, but this is just the outward expression of now when Mashiach comes, first he must suffer before he comes as king. He must be afflicted. He must be struck down. And that set that into motion. Now the Lord's not happy.
Right. And the other thing that surprised me about that whole scenario, well, first, because nowhere in there did Aaron's, is it recorded that Aaron said anything or did anything, but he had to die after Moshe hit the rock.
Which is weird for Aaron because he had his hand in the golden calf and didn't die. He complained against Moshe and didn't get sorry.
Right. Yeah. But just being in the room and hearing the commandment was enough for him to be held accountable when it was poorly executed. Yeah. And I'm like, woo.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, okay. Yeah, that priesthood thing, be careful.
Yeah. Because with Aaron, you don't see that. Aaron, I don't want to call Aaron a robot. But there's certain things that the Lord did not hold him accountable for. And a lot of that, in my interpretation, is like, okay, if you're a congressman and you swear to uphold the Constitution,
right,
it doesn't matter what your faith says. That wasn't the oath.
Right.
Matter of fact, you took the oath before your faith, before God, to do just that. So when you get in and now you have, I don't care if it's an atheist agenda or a Christian agenda, if it's running contrary to the oath you took, you're a liar.
Exactly.
You're an absolute liar. You swore an oath before God to uphold the Constitution. Aaron's position required such a thing. So whether it be golden calf or whether it be actually given the sacrifices as prescribed for the Lord, he swore an oath before the Lord that this job he would do. Aaron could not do anything else but represent the people.
The thing that was interesting to me is the only thing that made me question my thought. Yes, it is. It's very sad because Moshe has to take his brother up on a mountain to die.
Yeah.
So that was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Imagine all of the things he's been through already. And dealing with these crazy people.
Yeah.
And then because of the frustration of that moment and how he let it get to him, now he's got to take his own brother up onto the hill, take the robes off of him, put him on his son,
Eliezer,
and he's going to die.
Yeah.
So that is heartbreaking. But the thing that made me also think is, so Aaron has lost 2 sons because they thought they knew better how to serve God than the instructions that they were given. So Aaron already
By the way,
knows,
that was another incident of zeal.
Yes. Exactly.
That was zeal gone wrong. But in the Hebrew, it literally says they were absorbed by God because it's as if they bumped into him because they just went in there after having some wine, running in the temple before it was the prescribed order of things. They were overzealous. So that's one time it didn't work out well.
Exactly. So Aaron intimately and in that moment wasn't even allowed to mourn. And that he knows intimately how exacting and precise God's instructions are and how to the letter they must be followed. And then he and his brother receive an instruction. that are very specific, very precise. And his brother goes and does something different. And he has to pay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, this hurts. This thing, the requirements. And this is, in the sequence of Torah story, we know that just Torah studies, we know that shortly before this, Aaron is given gifts by God.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the priesthood.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you these sacrifices.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you this. He on multiple occasions in the text, he's saying, I'm giving you this as a gift.
Yeah.
I'm giving you this as a gift. I'm giving all of these beautiful moments between Aaron and the Father. And then, boom. You got to die.
But even that is done so dignified. Because we've already seen stories where the earth opened up, which actually two of them, that earth situation did not kill. But the earth opened up, swallowed people. The fire swallowed people. The plague killed people. The serpents killed people.
Right.
But with Aaron, it's in one place it says, lay down with the fathers, and another collected with the people. But it quite literally was, okay, lay down, Aaron, it's time. Lay down and die. That's it. Same way with Moshe when it comes up, that he would die the same way Aaron did, and that means, okay, it's time. Because even in here with Moshe, the Lord said, all right, I'm going to let you see everything, and once you see everything, you'll be collected back to your people. You're no longer separated out. Yeah. You're dead, but you're brought back down low, kind of a thing, back to where you started from. But after you see all this, it's time for you to lay down and die. But it's just so clinical, sterile, dignified, proper even, but yet at the same time represents the way I think we all desire to go when we go. Now, I don't know, like me, I wouldn't mind going in just something that makes national news. Like a third of the earth blew up, Roy died with it, kind of a thing. Like I'd like a big noise, but but there's deaths that we don't want. Right. There's deaths that we don't want to get cancer and die of disease. We don't want to do that. We don't want to be so impoverished that we starve and we die from starvation. Right. So there is a such thing as a successful death. Right. I mean, either way you end up dead, but there's ones that add to you and there's ones that take away from you. How you're known. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot down in his prime, but it was a glorious death in so much of the strength that it brought to his name and to his message to permeate through the decades and to keep going. And then there's those that die in vain. That just the death. There are. I watched a show called The Highwayman, and it's a movie. Sorry, it's a story about Bonnie and Clyde. And there's one guy. His name was Frank Hamer, and he was a Texas Ranger. And he's most known for now being the one that led the people to mow down Bonnie and Clyde. That's it. The sad thing about that is, up until that point, he had an incredible career. As a man of integrity, he actually took it upon himself to stop many a lynch mob. He went after the KKK in Texas. Right. A white guy.
He was busy.
With a gun. Yeah. He went after the KKK and he stopped all of these lynch mobs. Nobody knows that about him now. Because even though it wasn't his death, still a death. More of a morbid and outlaw death. That's what he's associated. I'm like, his whole legacy of what he did on behalf of people was kind of lost with that. And that's your options.